So we're going to go gold mining this morning. Not a bad first day activity for a conference, right? What I want to talk about today is how do we become the leaders that our people need? You can read a lot of books today from a lot of different authors that will tell you all the things that you need to do to be a good leader. And you've probably read a lot of those books. How many of you have read a book on leadership? Exactly. We've all read them, right? You've probably read more than one. And they're all good in their own way. But the reality is that we have to become the leaders our people need us to be. Not what a book author says we should be, not what some article on the internet or some podcaster says that we should be. We have to be the leader our people need us to be. And that means that perhaps our leadership style has to change and adapt based on the people that we're leading. Maybe some of you have found where perhaps you've been in a role where you've had some people reporting to you and you've had tremendous success. And then maybe you get promoted, or maybe you take a lateral move and you struggle with some of the same tactics that worked so well before. Those are the things that we're going to talk about today. Why is that? You didn't change, but the people that are following you changed, or maybe their expectations changed. And so when we think about that, that's why becoming the leader that our people need us to be, becoming a leader worth following, is so critical. And that's where we're going to go for the next hour today. So I love John Maxwell as a great leadership writer. I think his insults his insights are quite interesting. That's my East Coast coming out, so my body's a little out of whack right now. So I love one of the things that John says that really resonates with me as a speaker. And when you think about the fact, how many times do they say, learn from your mistakes? I mean, that's common, right? We don't want to make the same mistake twice. That's not really cool to make the same mistake twice. It means we're a little slow on the uptake. But what if we could look at other people and say, well, gosh, I see the mistake they made. I don't want to do that. There's still not a lot of wisdom in that, though. And so the wisest people look at other people's successes and say, I need to replicate that. And so as leaders, it's important that we have mentors as well, that we have someone that we can bounce ideas off of, or that we can look back perhaps over our career and see that there are people that have influenced us and learn from the successes they've had and learn to replicate those successes. And so as you're thinking about my comments this morning, maybe we'll start going down a path and you'll say, oh man, Ed, I've heard this before. Time to tune out, time to check my emails, lots going on back home. I'd like you to stop for a minute and ask yourself, why am I hearing this again right now? What is it that the universe has told me I need to hear this again? Maybe there's something there. I gave a talk for a state association. This was just a little pre-pandemic. And after it, a lady came up and said, we would like to have you speak at our local chapter. This exact same topic, Ed. It was marvelous. Great. So a couple months later, I'm at their chapter meeting, and she says, well, because I heard this before, don't mind me. I'm going to be over here. I'll probably be checking emails and stuff since I heard what you had to say. I said, okay, and I just kind of smiled. And what was funny is I never saw her pick her phone up. I was kind of keeping an eye on that. And she came up to me after the session and she said, Ed, I heard so much new stuff this time. Now, granted, I probably told some different stories and made some, key points a little bit differently. But that cemented for me this idea that sometimes, we are a little slow on the uptake. We need to hear something maybe a second time or a third time for it to really sink in. And so allow it to sink in today. So let's jump in. We're going to look at, do we have a clicker? There we go. We're going to look at 8 different things over the next hour together. And we're going to start off with the idea that no one gets to the top alone. And we're going to finish with what your leadership legacy is going to be. That's our journey this morning. And what I want to emphasize as we begin this journey together is I want you to keep in mind how personal leadership really is. Personal to you and your style, personal to your people and what they need from you. So as we're going along this journey, think about those things for me. So think about where you are. Let's start here. Think about where you are in your journey right now. Did you climb the corporate ladder all by yourself? I see a couple of no's. Who helped you? Previous leaders? Previous directors? So these were people that maybe worked with you or reported to you and helped you elevate, right? So think about your work teams for a moment. Is it possible for you to hit your corporate goals without your department leaders, directors, managers hitting their individual goals? I should see every head in here saying, no, it's impossible, Ed. Absolutely impossible. And yet, how often do you see leaders who take full credit when an organization is doing well? I did this. I set the vision. I'm executing on that vision. Take a look at these mountain climbers. Anyone ever get to the top of Everest alone? No. They got a whole village it takes to climb that mountain. From the guides to the people carrying the equipment to medics, you name it, right? So you hear the name of the explorer who made it to the top of Everest. You don't hear about all those other people. But if they're a smart leader, they give those people credit and kudos when that credit is due. So the first step in being a really good leader who your people will want to follow is giving them credit for helping you to hit the goals that you have for your organization. Now, is it possible that your people are hitting their goals and the organization still is not? Yeah, it is. And that, my friends, comes down to your leadership. If your teams are in some way hitting their goals, but the organization isn't staying on track, then there is something wrong at the head of the ship. Maybe you're not executing the strategy properly or communicating it properly. Maybe folks are getting lost in the mission. Maybe the vision is off. I mean, think about if you're into sports. Think about any of your favorite sports team. Your team might be loaded up with superstar talent. I mean, no matter what sport you're talking about, these are some of the best athletes in the world at what they do. And yet some teams are perennially bad. How does that work? I've often thought, how does that work? It comes down to the coaching and the leadership of that team, the management of the organization. Are they putting those players in the right position to be the best that they can be? That's what we're called to be as leaders. Set the vision, communicate the strategy, and then put our people in the best position they can be in to execute on those things and be successful. And if we can put our people in those right positions, and I don't mean like the seats on the bus, I mean put them in the position to be successful. Give them the tools they need. Give them the training they need, the support that they need. Give them the incentives they need to be successful. And then we can get to the top of the mountain. We can open up that new facility. We can bring in more market share. We can increase the number of docks. Whatever your goals happens to be, we can do those things if we've put our people in a situation where they can be successful. What I see oftentimes with organizations that aren't successful is I see folks that either lack direction or lack the skill set to execute on that direction. I gave a talk to the American Orthopedic Executives Association a while back. And a gentleman came up to me after that presentation. He said, Ed, you and I have to talk. I believe that my human resources department is actively inhibiting my ability to grow this practice. And if I don't grow this practice, the docs are going to have my head. I said, yeah, okay, I get it. This was a practice that was fully owned by the doctors. The president was a non-doc. He was there to run the organization. And so what I ended up finding as we started working together was that he had a vision. He had a strategy. I believe he was the leader that they needed. The problem, in this case, was with the docs and their leadership and the way they treated their staff. And it was getting to the point that this staff was well paid because the docs kind of knew they were ogres and didn't treat their staff very well. So they just paid them quite well. But what does that lead to? Well, I show up, I punch the clock, and I'm not going to go above and beyond. They weren't referring their friends to work there. They weren't impassioned with the patients coming in. And so their marketing brand and their employment brand was suffering. So the leadership wasn't necessarily, the problem wasn't with the person who, quote, had the leadership title, but it was with other people who were the, if you want to call them the informal leaders in the organization, in this case, the docs. So when we talk about leadership today, I want you to think about it in broad terms, not positionally. Because someone doesn't need a title to be a position, and we're going to talk about that in a moment here. So when we think about positional thinking, here's what I mean by that. Anyone in here recently promoted to their job or recently transferred? A couple, okay. So I'm going to pick on you for 1 second. So, I'm sorry, can you tell me your name? Stephanie. Okay, so Stephanie gets a new role. She's got director, manager, VP, she's got some lofty title now, right? Now, you're all going to work for Stephanie. How long are you going to give her to prove what she's worth? 6 months, okay? Anybody else? Anyone? 2 months. Oh, you're tough. 2 months. 1 quarter, okay? Wow, it's shrinking, Stephanie. This is a problem, right? Anyone giving her a year? Okay, a couple of you giving her a year. All right, you're generous souls, okay? Here's my point. If Stephanie thinks that she is going to be your leader just because she has that title, forget it, right? People don't follow us because of our title. That title buys us this short period of time. Maybe it's a year for some of the generous souls, and maybe if you're leading this lady over here, forget it. You got 2 months and that's it, right? Okay? That's positional thinking. That stripe on the shoulder of our new position only buys us a finite period of time, and that's it. So during that period of time, one of the things that we have to show our people is that we care about them. Nothing else happens if we don't care about our people. Nothing. So in that short period of time, Stephanie, show your people that you care about them. Now, what happens after she shows that she cares is people say, okay, I'm going to give her a little bit more time. Now, you're not getting a whole nother year from the ones in the back, but you might get another 2 months over here, okay? And in that next period of time, what we're going to expect out of Stephanie is to show that she can help us achieve our goals, our career path, our inspiration. And then finally, if she shows us those two things, then we can trust her. That's when trust starts. And so we only have that limited period of time, folks, to show someone that we care, that we want to help them, and that they can trust us. And that's true anytime you switch positions or anytime you get a new employee reporting to you. Because remember, the clock resets for that new person. You are their new boss. Even though you may have been in that role for 10 years, you are their new boss. And so the virtue of the position, limited time. I believe the best leaders fail and fail often. In fact, sometimes people say, if you're going to fail, fail forward. Okay, at least fail and learn something from it. It's okay to fail. If you're sitting here today and you are the type of person who says, I need to be perfection. I get stuck sometimes in making decisions because they have to be the exact right decision. That's problematic. It shows a lack of self-esteem and confidence on your part. And if you think your people don't see that, you're kidding yourself. They see it. So I believe that one of the best ways that we can solve that problem is to ask our people for help in making some key decisions. I mean, think about top leaders around the world in government. Have cabinets, do they not? People that specialize in specific areas to help them make decisions. We have it too. We've got the people that report to us. It is not a sign of weakness if you're asking them for help. Honestly, it's a sign of strength, and it will invigorate those people because you'll show that you care about their input. That first step in building trust. The reality is, and not just because you're all in the medical field, you're in the people business. If you have employees, you're in the people business. Now, I may upset a lot of you with what I'm about to say, because you always hear that the customer is always right. But we all know the reality is the customer is not always right. In fact, lots of times they're wrong. We may not be able to tell them that, but they're wrong. But I don't say you're in the people business because you have customers. I say you're in the people business because you have people. And unless you can take care of those people, nothing else you're doing in your business matters. Not building that new facility, not installing that new machine, not in hitting your revenue goals, not increasing the profit share, whatever your big, lofty goals are, none of those matter if you don't first take care of your people. And that is your calling as a leader. First and foremost is to take care of your people. Because the reality is, to be significant to your people, you got to do three things. Care about them, do stuff for them, and trust them. If you have people you don't trust, maybe because they've broken trust with you, then you've got to do one of two things. It's your job to rebuild that trust. You are the leader. I don't care if they burned you. You're the leader. It's your job to rebuild that trust. And if it can't be rebuilt, it's probably time to manage them out of the organization. And sometimes that's a tougher decision, right? To manage someone out of the organization. But the reality is, in order to be a significant leader, you've got to have people along for the ride who are committed to helping you achieve the vision that you have set for the organization or for your department, whatever your area of responsibility is. Because one is too small a number to make anything happen. You can't do anything alone. You need your people. And so the reality is, you ever heard the saying that if no one is following you, are you a leader if no one's following you? The obvious answer is no, right? Some would say you're just out for a walk because you turn around, nobody's behind you, right? So you're not leading anybody anywhere. Like the dog's not even with you. So, at least if you're on a walk with the dog, right? The dog's following you along, okay? We can't get to our goals. And when I say our, I mean your organizational goals or your personal goals without other people. Early on in my career, I had probably one of the worst bosses of my career. And at the time, I didn't know that because I was too inexperienced. I'm a couple years out of college, and the guy wasn't all bad. But I remember he said to me one time, he said, "Ed, don't give away all your knowledge. Knowledge is valuable. Knowledge is what ensures your value to the company. So don't give it all away." And I remember I was 24, 25 at the time, and I remember thinking, that doesn't sound right to me. I wasn't experienced enough to know the foolishness of those words. I just thought, this doesn't sound right to me. And now what I've learned all these decades later is just how foolish that is. If you retain all your knowledge, you don't develop the people around you, do you become more valuable to your organization? I see a couple heads shaking no. I would say yes, you do. In your current position. That's it. You will never grow to another position because you'll be too valuable to grow to another position. They're going to look at you and say, gosh, I can't move her. She's so good at what she does. I can't live without her in that role. So to be true to ourselves and our career goals, we have to share our knowledge. We have to develop our people. So not just for the good of the organization, but if you want to talk selfishly, if we know that we need to get to the top of the mountain and we need other people to get there, then we've got to share our knowledge and develop them to be the followers that we need in order to get to the top of the mountain. The problem is sometimes us. When's the last time someone in the workplace let you down? How many of you were let down last week by someone in the workplace? Wow, you guys, okay, only a couple of you. Good for you, okay? Now, think about the last time someone let you down. What were you feeling when that happened? How did you feel about that person? I see some smiles. Anyone in here happy they were let down? Anyone angry they were let down? A couple of angers. How many disappointment? Okay, disappointed, right? There's a range of things. Now, the reality is, do people make mistakes? Absolutely. They're going to make mistakes. So we're not just talking about making mistakes. Let's say this was a situation, someone didn't deliver a project on time, didn't get you budget numbers, whatever it happened to be. Chances are they made excuses for that, right? All the reasons why they didn't get it done, it wasn't done on time or done properly, whatever the case might be. And you sat there going, yeah, right, heard this story before, just get it done on time. But when's the last time you let somebody down? And how did you talk to yourself about that? Oh, it wasn't really that important anyway. Oh, it didn't really need to be done by last Friday. I could get it done today. It's not a big deal. We sometimes let ourselves off the hook. We don't hold ourselves to the same accountability standards that we hold other people to. That's self-leadership. People will see through that. And when we don't lead ourselves well, not only will they lose confidence in us, they'll stop following us. They'll stop executing on our vision because of that. That's the biggest problem with a lack of self-leadership. So everything starts with us. This is where you get to be selfish. Everything starts with us. We have to lead ourselves well and take care of ourselves before we can start taking care of our people. And so that means developing yourself. What are the kinks in your armor that need fixed? Many times, like you, I go to conferences to learn, to have my mind expanded. What do we do with that information? You're going to get a big brain dump this week. What are we going to do with all the information? Did we come here to San Diego to hang out by the marina and hopefully get some sunshine out there and then go back and say, oh, that was a good time. It was nice to be back live with people again. And yeah, they were good speakers. But then we don't do anything with it. We're not holding ourselves accountable to the cool ideas you are going to hear this week at this conference. So hold yourselves accountable to doing something with that, taking it back and empowering your people if they're not here with you, sharing that knowledge, sharing that inspiration so they can help you to hit your goals. So that starts with self-discipline. If you're a procrastinator, that's a topic for another day, right? Okay, don't be a procrastinator. But holding yourself accountable to being the leader your people need you to be, to setting the example, not being one of those do as I say, not as I do people, okay? But I think about self-discipline as also being, if I expect high standards out of my people, then I have to expect high standards out of me too. I need to live up to the high standards of my people, not your standards, standards of your people. And so that starts with accountability. Just because you might be the boss, okay, doesn't mean you lack accountability. In fact, I can tell you that my team knows that when I get stressed, I can get a little snippy. It's a weakness that I have. I work on it. But I've empowered all of them to tell me, Ed, cut it out. You're getting snippy. You're getting irritating again. Why? Because it's accountability for me. Sometimes I don't know I'm doing it. And 99% of the time, it's not even directed at them. They're not causing me the stress. It's other things. And I need that. I need that rubber band snap for them to say, Ed, knock it off. And I've told them, please, tell me when that's happening. That's what I'm talking about with seeking accountability. When am I not at my best? It's okay to call me out on that. Let me know I'm not at my best right now. Let me know what you need from me and how I need to be at my best for you. After all, we're telling our people this, right? We tell them what we need from them and what being at their best means. And we challenge them. But just because we're sitting in the driver's seat doesn't mean that we shouldn't seek that same accountability from them. In order to have followers, they've got to tell us sometimes, and they have to be empowered to tell us what they need out of us in any given situation. And that might mean we need to be followers every now and then. Maybe you've been sitting in the top role for a while. Sometimes it means we've got to step back and say, hey, maybe there's someone else who knows a little bit more about this topic than me. Maybe I need to take a little bit of a side seat here. Let them drive for a little bit. It would be okay. Again, it's not a sign of weakness. Open your mind up to learning from the people around you. They'll thank you for it. It's part of their self-development. It's part of your self-development. Just because you're the leader doesn't mean that you have to know everything and be everything to everybody. I can't find that in any leadership book I've ever read. So let's allow our people to drive every now and then. Best time is when you're on vacation. You're here at a conference. Someone's got to be covering for you. Someone's got to be making decisions when you're gone. It's a great way to develop people if you've got the right people behind you. Take some patience. People aren't going to be what you need them to be right away. But if it's taking too long, I would argue, again, it comes down to two things. Either you're not the leader they need, or they're not the follower you need. Those are the only two possibilities. If you're running out of patience with someone, those are the only two possibilities. One's easy to remedy. The other one is a tough decision. We've all been through some tough times lately. I mean, this whole pandemic thing has been a nightmare for everybody, especially in healthcare, obviously. That's the time leaders are made. There are a lot of stats out there that show the level of disengagement of employees right now. Some put it as high as 60 to 65% of today's employees are actively disengaged on the job. And that, quote, when the pandemic is over, they're out, they're gone. They're going somewhere else. How many of you are currently short-staffed and are looking for people? Yep, obviously. Full room. If we're not making the decisions that we need to make for our people now, that will get worse. Everyone wants to blame the shortfall on a number of things that are outside the realm of our control. I believe there's only one thing, regardless of the industry that you're in, that's outside of your control, and that's whether there are enough people in the population trained to do the work that you need them to do. If there's not enough, okay, that's out of your control. That's something we've got to work backwards in the education system. But if you're short-staffed of key people, what I'd ask you to look at as a leader is, what is it that we're doing or not doing that's contributing to that shortfall? Why is it that people are going to the hospital system next door or the practice across town and not coming here to work? They may not be fully staffed, but maybe they're better off than we are. Why is that? That's a choice that we're making as leaders. What's going on in our organization that might be contributing to the lack of staffing inside our organization? Those are critical decisions. Those are critical questions we have to ask ourselves in times of crisis. Is there something we are doing that's contributing to this? And I'm not putting all the blame on you. We know there are a lot of societal issues going on right now that are contributing to our staffing shortfalls. But those societal things are outside of our control. What I'm talking about are what are the things that are inside our control that we can do? What's the biggest challenge to having a disengaged workforce? What's the biggest problem with that? Especially in your industry. I'm sorry? Patient care, making mistakes, not having good bedside manner. It'll kill you, right? I don't care how good the docs are in your practice. If people don't feel that they're treated well, they're going to go somewhere else for their care. And ultimately, that's where our revenue comes from, and that's probably what you're being held accountable for. And that shortfall in staffing contributes to patient care, right? It's this waterfall effect. So again, I don't mean to belabor that point, but I'm using it to illustrate this idea that we, I believe, are in a critical moment right now. And if you think that once the pandemic is over, when that magic event happens, that all of a sudden your staffing supplies are going to come back and everything's going to be wonderful, you're kidding yourself. I'm willing to bet if you go back to 2019, 2018, 2017, you were having some of the same struggles you were having right now. Only we didn't have the societal issues to blame, so there are some other things going on there, right? As leaders, we've got to face those kind of things head on. Now, sometimes leaders get into this situation where they don't like criticism. Maybe I don't want to get into the spotlight because I don't want people to criticize me. I see some smiles. You know what I'm talking about. I get criticized a lot. I mean, I put myself out there in events like this, and there's several hundred of you in this room, and invariably there's going to be a couple of you that I have not resonated with, right? And hopefully you give me good feedback on how I can improve. That's not what I'm talking about. When people criticize you for who you are, okay, take it with a grain of salt. Love what Aristotle's saying here. I mean, if you don't put yourself out there, you can avoid criticism, right? Don't come out of your office, don't engage with your people, and guess what? They're still going to criticize you. You just won't hear it. So be open to that feedback. Take on the challenge of getting out of the ivory tower and going out there and getting in touch with your people. It's huge. They want it. They crave it. You need to hear the criticisms they have, whether it be about you or about the organization or about their boss. We've got to hear those things. Leaders need to not have rose-colored glasses on. We've got to see the down, dirty, and ugly stuff if we're going to be the leader that our people need us to be. Because down in the dirt and the muck and the ugliness is where the gold is. Now, I've never been in a gold mine, but I've had some abandoned mine tours. Anyone been in a cave or an abandoned mine? There's not sexy places. They're dirty, they're cruddy, they're musty, they're wet, damp. Okay? So if you're going to go dig for gold, what do you have to do? You got to dig, right? You got to dig down through the dirt. Now, when you find that hunk of gold, what do you have to do? Is it pretty? Got to polish it. That's all we're saying as leaders. In these critical moments when we're getting the criticism, where's the gold and how do I polish it? How do I take that criticism, how do I take that defeat, whatever the situation might be, and fix it? That's what we're called to do as leaders, be fixers. Because the reality is that our people can only change for us if we are open to improvement and we open their minds for improvement. And the best way to do that is to show them that we are on the journey too. We don't have all the answers. We're not perfect leaders. It's okay to admit you're not a perfect leader to your people, because guess what? They already know. They know your faults. They know your problems. They know it. It's okay to admit it. I gave you one of my skeletons, and I get snippy when I'm under stress. You think the people I work with don't notice that? You think my wife doesn't notice that? Absolutely they do. So own it and attempt to fix it. And that's the same thing we have to do with our people. If we want them to change, then we need to have people who are open to improvement. And that tone of that constant improvement, that constant self-development, that starts with you as the leader. Do they see you improving yourself, adding value to who you are as a leader, making their lives better? Because when they see you emulating that behavior, that's when they will start emulating that behavior. Because if you have followers, it is a massive responsibility. And followers are the power behind your leadership. Think about any good leader throughout history, even the so-called bad ones, the evil leaders. They had followers. They had people who believed in what they were doing. So it's an awesome responsibility to be a leader. And it's awesome to be able to develop our people. I think it's the number one thing we're called to do as leaders, actually. Is to develop our people. Develop the people around us to be the best that they can be. Because if you've got them firing on all cylinders, then I'll show you an organization that's firing on all cylinders. So we've talked about accountability. We've talked about developing our people. What starts to happen is this old adage of loving what you do and you'll never work a day. I mean, we've heard this before. Okay, it's still work, folks. It's still a four-letter word. I get it. But think about the joy that happens when you are at your best in the office. We all know there's going to be bad days in the office, right? Not every day is going to be, rose petals and champagne. Not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that work can't still be truly engaging and challenging, and dare I say even fun. That we find the fun in the challenge, in the problem solving. That's part of what our people are asking for us, or from us, I should say. How is it that you can challenge me to be the best person that I can be so that I can continue on my journey of self-development and I'm enjoying what I'm doing? Even with the struggles and the challenges and the heartaches and the stress, people will still enjoy what they're doing if you're challenging them. That's where the love of what we do comes in. So Jack Welch once said, he talked about passionate people. And that's ultimately what we're talking about when we talk about challenging our people to be the best that they can be and putting them in the situations they need to be in to be successful for us. Passionate people will run through walls for you. The dispassionate, they're the ones on their phones in your meeting. Oh, boss, I got an email. I got it. Okay, so that email is more important than what you're saying in the meeting. That's problematic. Passionate people are present. They're in the moment. They care about the challenges and even the mundane things that are going on in the workplace because they care about the vision that has been set by the leader. And that's all that Mr. Welch is saying here, okay? Is that builds an energy inside the organization. And that energy has to start with you. Even on your worst day, you're called to be energetic. I remember being at a corporate training event, And it was an all-day thing, and we had 2 speakers that were tag teaming all day. And the one gentleman, I had just met him, seemed like a nice guy, and he'd get up here, and he'd give his talk for about an hour. We'd go on break. He'd disappear. The next guy would come on. That was kind of the rotation for the day. What I didn't understand is the second guy always stayed in the room. Like, well, where does this other guy go all the time? Why is he leaving the room for the hour? The guy was sick as a dog, was going to the bathroom. He was that sick. But we didn't know it when he was up here. Now, that's an extreme example of what being positive and energy is all about. Please don't go to work sick. We've seen what the results of that do, okay? But you know what I'm saying here, right? The energy starts with you as the leader. If you are not an energetic person, your people can't possibly be energetic. It is impossible for that to happen because you set the tone. Now, maybe you're not the top dog in your organization. You're in charge of a department or division or something. And you're saying, yeah, well, my boss isn't a ball of fire. Okay, so is that going to be your excuse? You can't do anything about your boss. This session is not about managing up. We'll talk about that another time, okay? But you can set the tone for your team. You can be the energetic leader, the passionate leader that your team needs. Stop the downward flow of the crud, okay? If you can't solve all the problems in your organization, solve the ones that you're directly responsible for. That's huge if you can do that. And your people will follow you because of that. They'll be energized and they'll be passionate. And guess what? Sooner or later, that dispassionate leader is going to be out. Last year, a board of a not-for-profit long-term care facility brought me in because the organization was struggling. And they wanted to start with the board to kind of make them gel. And so for about 6 months, we were working with this board and getting them together. And what they realized is, wait a minute, we've done some of the things we're supposed to do. It's our CEO who's letting us down. And when I finally met this guy, it was about 3 months into the process, I thought, wow, this guy has got to be one of the most boring, blah, drab people I've ever shaken hands with. I mean, 15 minutes across the desk from him, I'm like, what time is it? I got to get out of here. This guy is just sucking the life out of the room. And the board couldn't figure out why the organization wasn't performing. Like, right there's your problem. I don't care what his pedigree is. He is not the leader this organization needs. They were building a wing onto the facility. It was going to double the bed size in this facility. That meant new staff coming in. That meant promoting some people. And when I talked to the vice presidents and the department directors, they were all like, oh, yeah, we come, we do what we can. And there was this humdrum sort of mentality. There was no passion and no energy. And so fortunately, the board did decide to move on from this guy. And they promoted their CFO. And she's awesome, and she's killing it. That's how important being passionate and energetic is. So one of our pitfalls, one of the challenges that we can have as leaders, if we don't get out of the ivory tower enough, we don't talk to our people enough, is that our reality might be different from our people's reality. We may not really know what's going on in the organization the way we should. Early in my career, my first HR role with the organization I was with, we ran a 24/7 operation. And so there were a couple days a week that I would go in 2, 3 in the morning to walk around on that shift and just talk with people. I'd do the same thing on the evening shift. And the morning shift guys would always make fun of me. You must want to go golfing today. That's why you're in, so you can be out of here at noon and you can go golfing. Must be nice if you walk around with your coffee and just talk to people all day. It took me a couple times of doing that. And then going to their post-shift management meetings and saying, guys, you got a problem over here on this belt. That group of employees, this is what's going on. The supervisor over there. It got to the point after a couple months of doing this that the shift manager said, Ed, when are you coming in again? I said, oh, you mean coming in, just walk around talking to people, holding my coffee? Is that what you mean? And he just chuckled. Because he realized he and his team were so focused on moving product through that they weren't close enough to what was going on with the people and the lack of training and the lack of direct supervision and guidance that these people needed. Their perception, because they were hitting their production numbers, was off. And so when we think about getting real, that's what I'm talking about. Do you really know what the concerns of your people are? And please don't sit there and say, oh yeah, we do an employee opinion survey every year. I got it. No. I mean, when's the last time you just spent time with people, one-on-one or in a small group, just to talk and listen? I believe as a leader, one of the best things we can do is something I call talk, listen, and then act. Get your people talking to you, listen to what they're saying, and then act on it. It's huge. It's so simple, but it's huge. That's going to take your rose-colored glasses off. Or maybe, if you've got blinders on, you can get those off too. Because maybe things aren't as bad as you think. Maybe you're not hitting numbers and it's woe is you, and ownership's on your tail because you're not performing or whatever. And you need that boost of we're on the right path, stick to the path. Our people will tell us that too. And that's huge. So talk to your people, but talk to them when you're really able and willing to listen. And that means not being defensive, not being, oh, we've done that before, we've tried that, oh, that didn't work. No, just listen. Hear what they have to say, but be willing to act on it and tell them so if it's something that you know is going to make a difference. So this reality check that we're talking about may come with you admitting you have a weakness. Again, we all have them and our people know what they are, so admitting them is not a big deal. Because the reality is, people embrace real people. And you know what I'm talking about. You've met the fake people. They smile, they shake your hand. Oh, so lovely to meet you. And then, 2 minutes later, they don't remember your name. They act like they've never seen you before. We know these kind of people. You need to be real with your people. And that means being your real self, admitting your weaknesses, admitting perhaps your fears about things. It's okay to say, you're in a department meeting and saying, gang, I'm not sure how we're going to solve this problem. I need some help. That's being real with your people. And that's okay. It's okay to ask for help in solving problems. That's why you built the team that you built. So rely on them for that. Ask them for their honest feedback on you. But you have to have built trust with them to get the honest feedback. Ask for their honest feedback. It's hard because you're going to hear some things that maybe you'd prefer not to hear. But I'm willing to bet there are things you already know about yourself. So what difference does it make? If you're going to be the leader your people need you to be and want you to be, then we have to have those open and honest conversations about what they need from you. And those open and honest conversations start with, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What do you need from me? You'll be amazed at what they come back with. And some of it is just the easy things. Recognition is huge with people. And you might be sitting there saying, well, yeah, I get that. I tell my people thank you all the time. They know I appreciate them. Do they? There's a great book, easy read, if you want some homework, called Hug Your People. I think it should be must read for anyone who has people reporting to them. Author's name is Jack Mitchell. The guy owns a series of high-end clothing stores, a chain of clothing stores from Manhattan up through Connecticut. And the contents of the book are not rocket science. They're really not. But he knows the little things about all of his people. He knows that Sue likes roses, so guess what shows up on her desk on her birthday? He knows that Bill takes his daughter everywhere for soccer, so Bill gets a gas card every now and then. Do you see what I'm saying? He shows his appreciation in very specific ways. That's being real. That's asking your people for that fresh look at how you're leading them, how you are delivering what they need as a leader. That goes for how we reward them as well. So the bottom line, the challenge that I have for all of you is never stop growing. Your leadership skills that got you to where you are not going to keep you there, and they're not going to get you to where you want to go in your next position. Or if you're where you really want to be, they're not going to serve you 2, 3, 4 years down the road in that same position, in the same business, because business is going to change. So we have to come to events like this and read the books and listen to the podcasts and get in the CEO networks or whatever we can do to expand our minds so that our personal growth is a priority. We cannot, as leaders, afford to get stale. Many of you have letters after your name. That shows achievement, and that's awesome, and you have to get your credits to maintain those letters. Don't just go through the motions with those credits. Pick the things out that are really, really important to you. Go to the things that are your weaknesses and try to learn about them. But go to the things that are your strengths too. This was a new concept for me. Work on your strengths. Like, wait a minute, we always hear work on your weaknesses. But wait a minute. The best players in all sports constantly work on their strengths, and they make their strengths so good that it outweighs their weaknesses. I mean, I like to golf, and I could play golf all day, every day, and I'm never making the PGA Tour. It's just not who I am, okay? But I know the parts of my golf game that are really good, and I keep working on it because it makes up for the pieces I can't do well. So that's okay, too. Work on your strengths, but come at them from a different angle. So I guess the moral of this story is, look at what you need for yourself to continue to develop. Hold yourself to that high standard. Your people are going to see it. Because if you invest in yourself first, and you're a continual learner, it's going to promote a growth environment for your people. They're going to see that that's important. Whatever is important for you is going to be important for them. And so if that whole idea of self-development, if you preach it and you live it and you breathe it, they're going to follow suit. They're going to realize that this is something important that's expected of me. And guess what? As we do these things and our people do these things, all of a sudden we've upskilled our workforce. And now we're in a much better position. You talk about a culture that most people today crave. They crave a culture of self-development where the work matters and it means something. You want to solve some of your staffing challenges, create that kind of culture in your workplace, and you will start to attract really good people. Now, this is not a magic potion here. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But I guarantee you, over an extended period of time, as you start to change your culture, one of learning and development and caring and recognition and respect, watch out for what's going to happen with your people. Because people quit bosses. They don't quit organizations. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care that they tell you they're going for $2,000 down the road. I don't care that they tell you they don't have the equipment. I mean, all those things might be true. But the reality is, and you think about this for yourselves when you have job hopped. Oh, well, I job hopped, Ed, because I wanted to get to the next level, and I wasn't going to get there. Yeah, because your boss probably was not developing you to get you to that next level, with very few exceptions. If you have a turnover problem, you've got to look at the leadership in your organization. That's where it lies. It's not in your pay scale, though it could be a contributing factor. It's not your culture, though it could be a contributing factor. It's leadership and it's people. Don't underestimate that. Because the reality is people quit environments and people quit bosses who do these things to them, who are untrustworthy, devaluing, bosses that are incompetent, who are insincere. These are horrible traits for any leader. In fact, I would tell you that if you exhibit these traits, you're probably not a leader to begin with. Okay? But maybe you've gotten into that positional piece, and that's where Miss 2 months over here is going to see right through these things and say, wow, I'm not following this person. Because this kind of stuff is going to come out immediately, and people are going to see right through it. I don't suspect we have these things in the room today. But maybe you're sitting here saying, you know what, there's someone on my team who exhibits these traits. That's not a good thing. I guarantee you, if you've got someone on your team who's exhibiting these traits, I'm going to see a division or a department or a team that's not performing where you need them to perform. And sometimes we forget that it's this stuff. So as we wrap up, here's the gold today. You need to take responsibility for relationships. If you haven't heard over the last hour, that's been the theme. Relationships. Knowing your people. Knowing what they want, what they need from you. Building those networks of people who can be honest with you and give you the feedback you need to be the leader that you can be and that they need you to be. Value the people that work for you. Many of you are probably doing the exit interview thing, but do stay interviews. Talk to people who've been around a long time. Ask them why they're staying, what's working for them. That's valuable knowledge. I think, if you look at emotional health and being credible, it's key for us. Take some breaks. Encourage the use of vacation time. Those sorts of things. Very important. And finally, be open to being teachable. If you as a leader can let your guard down there, your people are going to value that. And they'll become teachable. I love this quote, and I always end a talk on leadership with this quote. Jackie Robinson says that a life isn't significant except for its impact on other lives. That, to me, is what leadership is all about. Being significant for other people. That's what they're asking of us. To have an impact on their lives, on their careers, so that at some point they're not standing on a stage like this saying, with you in mind, yeah, I remember when I had that horrible boss who's told me to do this and this and this, and it was just a mess. We want those people to be thinking about how you developed them, how you added value to them, how they trusted you unconditionally and helped you to execute on your corporate goals. That's what leadership is all about. So for the rest of the week, I challenge you. Go out and look for ways that you can be significant. Thank you.